What's up, guys? It's your boy Rilla here, and today we're bringing you guys another Diablo 4 Necromancer build. All right, now I know you see on the screen it looks weird. How come my gloves aren't upgraded? How come my pants aren't upgraded? How come my legs aren't upgraded? Well, I had seen also I have 2 rings at level 1, one amulet at level 1, ring level 1. So the other day while farming, when I made our last video, I haven't played this character. I've been leveling Druid on the other hand. We found this ring. And I've always liked minions, but I felt minions were in a very bad spot and I felt like they weren't that strong. But when I found this ring, my whole perception changed. So sifting through all the loot that I seem to keep just because I'm a hoarder, I found I had a lot of good minion stuff to use. Now, I didn't necessarily have all of the much needed resources to level this good stuff I had to use, and I also didn't know if it would be worth my time to level it, so we just threw it on to see how it goes. And I was surprisingly surprised at how good minions can be based off using what we dive into in our Infinite Shadow Mist build, but based off of just using Shadow Blight damage key passive. The shadow key passive just makes this build rock, and what I mean by that is we get to tap into our skeleton mages, the shadow variant of it, which we're going to go into. But first, let's dive into the abilities. Let's go over the build right quick, and then we'll dive into what makes it really tick. So if you notice on my ability bar, I do not use a basic skill, but we did have to use something to get out of there. So we use Reap. I could probably take this third point out of Reap and put it somewhere else, but that's where it is. So we just want Reap into Enhanced Reap into Acolyte Reap to generate corpse, which we don't even use anymore. It's not even on our bar. We threw our next stage, we threw 3 points into Hued Flesh just to get that corpse, that chance of corpse generation for lucky hit. Lucky hits, kind of important, but not the main focus of this build. Then we go down to our next tree. We go into Blood Mist, Enhanced Blood Mist, and Gassy Blood Mist. Pretty much the usual Blood Mist trio if you're going to use Blood Mist in any capacity. Boom. Then next we throw 5 points in the corpse explosion, because this is one of our damage dealers, because once again we're taking advantage of the shadow passive that we're going to get at the end of the build. So we go into enhanced corpse explosion, into blighted corpse explosion. Then we throw 1 point in the Grim Harvest, 3 points in the Fueled by Death. This is down here. We throw 1 point into the Crepify. I do not run the heart for the Crepify on this build. I have to actually manually cast it, but we'll dive into that a little bit later. Then we're going to enhance the Crepify and abhor the Crepify. We throw 3 points into amplified damage because we are going to be cursed people. And need I say, we have to throw points into our skeletons. We need our skeletons to be alive and doing what they do. That's super important. So we throw 3 points into Skeleton Meg Mastery to give them more damage and more life. Also, almost forgot about you. We also throw another 3 points into Skeleton Warrior Mastery to increase their damage and their life. I would also say if you're using this to level, getting these going early is really good. So I'll kind of prioritize that over some of the corpse stuff, because you just want your minions alive to do what they can do. Not saying they're going to out damage you, but they come in really handy when getting the procs that we need to get the big damage. Next, we'll dive down to our corpse skills. Corpse sigils, obviously got to get that. That's our way to apply vulnerable, our way to crowd control, way to stun. Obviously we want them to be pulled and slowed. And then we dive into the play corpse sigil, which applies the vulnerable. We are using shadow. This is a shadow summoner build. So we are using shadow skills in our blighted corpse explosions. So we'll throw 1 into Reaper's Pursuit, 3 into Gloom for the extra stacking damage, which now applies to us and our minions. Our minions do get 30% of whatever we stack, but that's only when it's individual to us, the caster, the necromancer, the player. But if our minions and us both get it, it only applies to what it says. So if I were to get 100% extra damage on casting a shadow skill, my minions then get 30% of that. But if my minions and I both got 100%, they would not get to double dip and get 130%, if that makes sense. So we have to keep that in mind. Well, we'll notice certain instances where it says you and your minions, and certain instances where it says you, and the you is where the minions get a little taste of your power. So we have 3 in the Gloom. We also have 3 in the Terror to do more damage. Apply slow, well, to enemies who are slowed or immobilized or stunned. they stack as well. Our minions get to dive into that as well. And then we have one, the crippling darkness, just for the occasional stun, so we can kind of dip into that. We only have 1 point in Carapace. Could put an extra point in there that I have wasted in that Acolyte Reaper spot, but we just have it here right now, no biggie. Then we move down into our ulti skill. We have none. I thought of running Army of the Dead, but the build feels really good without it. But we do need Golem Mastery, so we throw 3 points into Golem Mastery to give him 75% more HP and more damage. We go 3 points into Inspiring Leader. After we've been healthy for at least 4 seconds, me and our minions get 12% attack speed. Attack speed counts is really good for our shadow mages, so they can attack more. They, in a sense, become dots to help feed into our shadow passive, so we can get more of the extra damage it can provide that and do bigger, better damage. Then we have 3 points into Hellbent Commander. Your minions deal 50% increased damage while you're close to them, so we kind of want to stand in the general vicinity of them, whether that be the mages, whether that be the front line. Most of the time it's mages, and the reason me being in front. Then we have Death's Defense. Your minions cannot lose more than 30% of their max HP from a single attack or in a single instance. And then we have Bound in Essence. Every 5 seconds, your skeleton priest will heal your skeletons for an additional 20% of their maximum life. The fact that the minions just seem not to die is crazy to me as someone who played pre-season 1, played minion Necromancer, and I feel like they are always dying into this. Now they feel like they never die. It's a pretty cool change. And then where a lot of our damage comes from the build is proccing the Shadow Blight key passive as many times as possible. Shadow damage inflicts enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. You and your minions deal 10% bonus damage to enemies inflicted with Shadow Blight. Every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions while they're affected by Shadow Blight, they take an additional 15 to 1800 damage of shadow damage. We also have a lot of multipliers go into this. As I said, we're playing off of our shadow mages here. So shadow mages fire an additional shadow bolt every 4th attack. So the faster they attack, the faster they can get the extra attack. So in a sense that they themselves, because we do have an aspect to give us a 2 extra shadow mages, they themselves can start proccing this constantly while we're just standing in the back watching do what to do. Speaking of which, let's just dive into the Book of the Dead before we go into the aspects. We're using Reapers. We're using the Reapers 2, so there's 15% chance that they'll give us a corpse. That's really good. We're using Shadow Mages because they dive into the Shadow Blight key passive, which a lot of our crazy damage is coming from. We're using there too. Shadow Mages fire an additional Shadow Bolt every 4th attack. That's why we want to dive into attack speed to get honestly both of these to do what they do more often. Then we're going to the Blood Golem. While healthy, your Blood Golems gain 25% damage reduction and 50% increased damage. So we're going to use Blood Golem a lot of times to initiate things. We're going to use his ability to just dive in the front lines, do what he does, and then everyone follows suit. Also, if you didn't know, whenever you curse someone with Decrepify, whenever you curse a pack of enemies, your minions then prioritize that pack of enemies and they run towards them, start attacking them. That's what they do first, so we're going to take advantage of that. So now we're going to go into the aspects. A lot of these aspects are the same aspects I had on my Blood Mist build. The key difference aspects are obviously the ring that we found while we were out doing what we do, and these. But this helmet we had on our Blood Mist pretty much gives us Blood Mist triggers Corpse Explosion, and it reduces the cooldown. Blood Mist. Blood Mist is our get out of jail free card. The cooldown is not as good as Infinite Mist, but that's not the goal of this build, because this build is really to focus on minions. On our chest, we just have Disobedience. I got a good roll on it. We just keeping it. It's still sacred, I know. All right, so now things start to switch up. So now we have a pair of gloves that I randomly found, 802 gloves. Haven't put anything on them, except for this aspect. Each time one of your summoning minions damages an enemy, they gain 14% attack speed for 3 seconds up to 42%. This is a high roll on this, but this helps feed us to our shadow mages to get them to do what they do so much faster, to get more procs of Shadow Blight, to see more big damage numbers they can create and do so on and so forth from shadow damage. Our pants. So we just put a barrier on our pants. Nothing special here. I really couldn't figure out what to do here, but we just got a big barrier from pants for survivability's sake, because we're not frontlining as much. We are a little tanky, but not too tanky. All right, so on these boots, I was lucky enough to find your maximum number of skeleton mages is increased by 2. I made a mistake and disenchanted the one with skeleton warriors just because I wasn't paying attention. I thought I got the same one twice. So we are short one aspect. That aspect is supposed to be the skeleton warriors. We probably either put that on a helmet or on a chest. So we are short in this build 2 skeleton warriors. So we're supposed to have 6 skeleton reapers, 5 skeleton mages, 1 skeleton golem for a total of 12 units, but we're a little short, no biggie. So we're using the mages, which is of the 2 to pick. You would rather be short on the warriors than the mages because the mages have the extra attack and benefit off the attack speed and their range and their proccing shadow blight. So if you could only have one, this is the one to have. That's what we have on our boots. We are using a 2-handed weapon because we want the biggest number possible for damage to happen to proc. So with the blighted aspect, you do 198% increased damage for 6 seconds after Shadow Blight key passive damages 10 times. So we're going to have the Shadow Blight key passive going off via them standing in pools because the minions are going to be there and they're going to aggro them, being them being snatched into a pool with corpse tendrils, or being there are shadow mages just behind us going crazy because they have increased attack speed whenever they attack. So of this 198%, our minions will get 30% of this. So when we have this proc for us, it also procs for our minions and they get a 30% bonus from this because this only applies to us, the caster, well, us, the necromancer. So they get 30% of this. So we want this number to be as big as possible. Hence why we are using a 2-handed weapon. In our amulet, we threw corpse tendril on our amulet. Nothing too crazy here. I had a Hellbent Commander amulet I have been sitting on. So we just throw this on. Because it had Hellbent Commander to help our minions out. This ring, I will say, I don't necessarily know if it's necessary for the build. I would say it's really good for the build at a certain part of the game. But I will say if you get it and you want to try it, go right ahead because this build has very low investment to work, where a lot of builds might take a little bit more. And I feel this ring is one of the investments if you really want to try it. Back to this ring. While you have 7 or more, as I mentioned earlier, we're supposed to have 12 minions, but we're only at 10, so it's no big deal. While you have 7 or more minions, you gain lucky hit up to 10% chance to empower all your minions, causing the next attack from each to explode for 11,000 damage. That damage is also physical. From my understanding, looking around, the damage this ring does is based off of you, the player, in a sense. So this is a bit of a lower roll. But yeah, so this number doesn't just come from there. This number is kind of based off of what you are as a player, from my understanding. So that's pretty good to know that 10% chance is looming. They attack faster, so there's more opportunities to proc it. And if you just see a magical huge number just pop out, then it's probably this or Shadow Blight, one of the two. It would be great if this was shadow damage, not physical damage. That would be even better because we are diving into a lot of the shadow aspect of things, a lot of the upgrades we're doing are for shadow. But also pretty cool, if this procs on a vulnerable target, the minions do get 100% of all the stuff that we have going on with vulnerable. So they would do more damage to vulnerable targets. Sadly, like I said, I didn't do much to move this around or put pieces that need to be. So we only have 20% extra damage to anything vulnerable. So 20% is a little extra bit, but nothing to call right home about or whatever. And then our last ring, each time a Shadow Passer deals damage to an enemy, increases the next Shadow Blight's damage within 10 seconds by 20%, stacking up to 5 times. So that could be an extra 100% damage. Once again, the minions, we get 30% of that once it's at full stack, so they will get an extra 30%. So we could, in theory, throw an extra 60% damage on our minions by just standing in the back, watching them go crazy, watching them attack like crazy, because they do have the attack speed constantly going. So there's nothing really cool to dive into on the pieces of armor. As I said, this was a throw together thing to see could it even do the content where I'm at in the game, and it did it pretty easily, as you can clearly see by what's playing on the screen. But we will dive into where things do get very interesting, our Paragon Board. So our Paragon Board is pretty simple. We go up this path, we get Prime to start, wrap around. The first list I put in was control, because we do have a max control, so I figured why not. So we're through controlling here. We hit the other 2 rare nodes extra armor, damage to crowd control enemies, knowledge, damage, intelligence, and another 15% to crowd control. Next, we went up top to our cult leaderboard. Here we socketed Dead Riser. Whenever your minions deal damage to an enemy, that enemy takes 1% increased damage from you and your minions up to 12%. So once again, they only get to 12, not the 30% of the 12. So that's pretty good for 10 seconds. A lot of extremely good rare nodes on this board. Starting with Infused Warrior, our skeleton warriors deal 34% more damage additive, and they get 6.75 more armor. We also have minions custody. Minions get 28% damage reduction, and we get 10 Intella, and also they get another 14% damage reduction as well. Then we also have Overlord, which is another 28.8% minion damage, followed with 14.4% minion damage. Then we have Puppeteer, a flat out 20% more damage to our minions, also 5% attack speed for our minions. We have Infused Caster, 34% damage to our skeleton mages. They resist elements. Then we also have what we got on the board, which is Cult Leader. Your minions deal 15% increased damage for each minion type that you have active. This only applies to minion types Skeleton Warrior, Skeleton Mage, and Golem. I have yet to have a fight where all my minions died, so this is always up. Well, I did die one time, and then when I was running back, I ran by corpses and all my minions spawned, but that's neither here nor there. And then we have Armor Clad, where all of our minions get an extra 8% armor and 10% more health. And that is like the Puppeteer, the Cult Leaderboard is, you have to get, I almost feel like you have to get every node in here just to make sure for your minion survivability. Maybe you could, everything that's tied to minion survivability also has damage attached to it, so it's kind of hard to say, hey, maybe you don't get this one, maybe you don't need the extra 8%, maybe armor class not needed. I guess you would have to just see how your minions are going. How does it feel? If you feel like your minions are constantly dying, I would say get armor clad, but if you feel like, you're kind of steamrolling the content, they never die, you could probably take this off and use those points somewhere else. But then we go into our next board, which is Wither. Wither is pretty much just a shadow damage board. So a lot of this that we're getting is just for more shadow damage. Those are our nodes being Dragon Shadows, Gnawing Darkness. We threw the Golem socket here, just so our Golem can have a little bit more extra survivability, and he can do a little bit more damage. And Wither itself gives us extra shadow damage as well. And then we also got Wither. Your shadow damage over time effects have a 5% chance to deal 50% bonus damage each time they deal damage. This chance is increased by 1%, and the bonus damage is increased by 2.5% for each 50 willpower you have. So yeah, so this board is just a great board. So after this, it kind of sort of to me feels like we're just gonna probably dive more into the shadow damage type things. So I pretty much feel like the biggest buff your minions get is the Cult Leaderboard. So I feel like once you get the Cult Leaderboard, you're kind of set for, all right, my minions are as tanky as they can be. They do as much damage as they can do. Now moving forward, what do I need to do? You just get shadow damage to complement them, because it is a shadow damage minion build. So yeah, so this is all I have so far. As I said, this might not be needed. Armor Clad, you might be able to take that off. Maybe that 8% is not that big. If you were to take that off, there's tons of different ways to go here and go into your next board, which for me will probably just be Flesh Eater, because there's a lot of good damage things over there on the Flesh Eater side of things. And last but not least, one of the most important things, I'm kind of on the fence on which to do here. Currently, the hearts that we're running the Great Feast heart. I'm on the fence about this because it drains so much essence. It's hard for me to even be able to cast the Decrepify to get my cooldowns running for Blood Mist. I think Barber would be a fine replacement, just because Barber is insane. I think Barber can go in any build and do amazing things. I also think Creeping Death would also work, because you are tapping into shadow damage. But I feel this 70% increased damage that your minions get is kind of crazy. Like, well, it's just 70% increased damage altogether. It's not just minions, sorry. It's just 70% increased damage. It's kind of crazy. Yes, I can't cast a Decrepify, so my blood mist isn't off cooldown as much as I would like. I could also put on the heart that gives me Decrepify 24/7, just have it. But yeah, so that's the heart that we're running. It feels great. Like, the only flaw seeing it is the Decrepify. Other than that, it's an amazing heart to have. Our second heart, our vicious heart, is the automatically exploding corpses. They deal 24% decreased damage. And our brutal heart, which you could in theory use the Decrepify brutal heart if you have it, but we're choosing to use the revenge heart, which suppresses 17% incoming damage. And then whenever we use our blood mist, we go boom for extra 250% damage, then around 14,000 damage of fire damage to nearby enemies. We're kind of using that for survivability. As I said, I was just kind of thinking like, what would the bad things be if I ran into it? I kind of felt like I would be squishy, so we just went a little heavy on the defensive. After playing it for a bit, I can see the Decrepify ring being here and it not being that big of a deal, because you're really only playing this for the 17% decrease in damage that you're taking, not so much for the 250% damage, not for the 14,000 damage you're going to dish out. So yeah. Anyway, so this is the build I've been goofing around with. It was just something I wanted to see how it could do. How could it help me level up here at the current spot I'm in, almost level 80, primarily playing only Shadow Mist, well, Infinite Shadow Mist. This build is fun. It is decent. It's a lot more relaxed than what I thought it would be, because a lot of times you just hang back, stand near your shadow mages and just watch them go boom. Always remember, sometimes you gotta put your mouse up there and hit those corpse explosions if you ever get into certain fights where your minions are just beating the crap out of one thing. Necromancer build, of course, not the best. It's still Bone Spear. Second best is Infinimus. And I think Blood something or another is probably third, and this is probably like a 4th or 5th build. But if you only have a little bit of time, you have these lying around, or if you're just like kind of wanting to have a more laid back leveling experience, I think minions is a good way to go, because I think the minions do surprisingly huge numbers of damage and give you a much more relaxed feel to playing the game, where it isn't so stressful as it might be with some other builds. So if you guys enjoy this build guide, let me know. We got some more coming on the way. I'm working on a silver build as we speak, and I'm also leveling a druid as my second character. And I finally found something to make druid feel fun, not just, you know, tornadoes and not having the unique to do tornadoes. But anyway, that's enough of me rambling. You guys have a great day. Later.